Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome to the first lecture of week 7 on modernization and creative communication. In the previous lectures, we thoroughly discussed John Durham Peters' book Speaking into the Air, not only to understand the history of communication and the philosophical underpinnings, but also how communication is progressing holding the hand of modernization. Today, we begin our discussion on media, market and creative communication. In this session, we will focus on the intersection of media, market dynamics and the role of creativity in effective communication strategies. So, what is the role of media in shaping the current communicative practices? Media is not just a collection of tools or platforms. It is a dynamic force that shaped societies, influenced cultures, and transformed how we interact and communicate over time. Understanding its evolving role is critical in order to grasp the larger narrative of modernization and the creative potential of communication. So to understand it better, let's imagine a world without media, no newspaper, no television, no internet. How would society then share ideas? How would movements gain confidence and momentum? How would culture revolve then? It's also impossible to imagine, isn't it? So, from ancient oral traditionals to the digital platforms we use today, media has always been a driving force in shaping societal norms, cultural discourses, and most importantly, communicative practices. Let's begin by acknowledging that media is more than just a tool. It's a critical institution that plays a defining role in shaping the fabrics of the society. Media influences the way we think, express ourselves, and engage with others. Whether it's a news outlet or a social media platform or a podcast, media channels are deeply embedded into our daily lives. Now let's take a journey through time. Communication practices, as I have already mentioned in my previous lectures, didn't start with social media or television. They started with oral traditions. In ancient times, stories, myths, and cultural values were passed down orally, creating a sense of identity within communities. Then came the written word, print media, and the revolution of mass communication with radio and television. Fast forward to today, and we have digital platforms like Insta, Twitter, and YouTube, right? What's fascinating is that despite the massive leap in technology, the core purpose of media remains the same. And what's the core purpose? To connect with people, share ideas, and shape societal norms. Each phase of this evolution reflects the modernization of communication practices, illustrating how societies adapt to technological changes. And why is media so influential? It is because, as I said, it shapes societal norms and cultural discourses. Through the content, it delivers what? It delivers new ideas, challenges the old ones, and creates a platform for diverse voices to be included. Now, you have always seen social media reforms, right? Social media movements like hashtag Me Too, or let's say Black Lives Matter. These are the two most important social movements that gained momentum because of the media platforms where they were shared. Cultural shifts also, like the rise of influencer marketing, reflect how media molds consumer behavior and communication strategies, right? So media doesn't just mirror society, it drives change. It actually dictates how we perceive the world, interact with it, and respond to it. So for creative communication, like those who are creating communication or creative communicators, this understanding is very crucial. You are not just using media, you are shaping the way people think and they will act thoroughly. Now, let's connect this to the broader theme of our course. Why then we are talking about media when we are talking about modernization and creative communication? First, media's journey from oral traditions to digital platforms showcases the trajectory of modernization. Then, by understanding this, you will gain insights into how societies adapt to new communication tools, enabling you to anticipate future trends and innovations. And media is a space where creativity thrives, right? So, think about storytelling on TikTok or any podcasting or even the memes. Each is a unique way of communicating ideas very clearly. So learning how to leverage these platforms effectively is very essential for excelling in modern communication fields. And finally, I would say that to be a creative communicator, you must critically analyze media's impact. What are the implications of content creation? How does media influence public opinion? These are the questions you will explore to become thoughtful and responsible communicators. Now, in this course, in this session, we will be exploring these 5 key areas. The evolution of communicative practices driven by media technologies, media's impact on language and communication, its role as a cultural narrator, and media's contribution to identity formation, and the democratization of communication in the digital age. Now, let's go back to time. Think about the invention of a printing press in the 15th century. It wasn't, just a technological marvel. It transformed society by making books accessible to the masses, isn't it? Fast forward to today, to 20th century, radio, as we have discussed in one of the chapters in Speaking into the Air, and television revolutionized how we told stories. Now we could hear voices and see moving images. And today, with the internet and social media, the evolution has become even more dramatic. We are not just receivers of information, we are active participants in communication. Let us now focus on how communication has evolved through various historical milestones driven by technological advancements in media. First, the journey of communication, as I said, began with oral storytelling, where knowledge, tradition, and culture were passed down through spoken words generation after generation. This method was intimate and community-centered, creating strong bonds with the societies. The invention of writing marked a revolutionary shift, I would say. It allowed information to be documented and preserved across generation. With this, communication transcended time and space, and ensuring that ideas could be shared and remembered beyond the limitations of human memory. The next major leap was the printing press. Introduced in the 15th century, as I said, it democratized knowledge by making books and printed materials accessible to broader audience, right? And then technological advancements revolutionized communication. It made this, printing press made knowledge and storytelling accessible, right? No longer restricted to oral storytelling and hand scripted manuscripts. Those informations could now reach to mass audience very quickly and immediately. And then we had the innovation or invention of radio and television for mass broadcasting. For the first time, people could hear the voices and see moving images, making storytelling more immersive. And then perhaps the most transformative of all, the internet, which broke barriers of time and space and enabling real-time global connectivity. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram introduced, participatory communication practices where users became both creators and consumers of the content. Now, one of the most noticeable shifts in communication practices is the way news and storytellings have evolved. First, in the past, newspapers and televisions were the primary source of news, a one-way communication medium where information was delivered to a passive audience. Today, platforms like Facebook and Twitter or the podcast have changed the game. News is now real-time and interactive, with audiences participating in discussions, sharing their opinions, and even creating content. For example, during global event or crisis, social media acts as what? Acts as an immediate source of update. So, bypassing traditional news outlet, you need not to sit for those scheduled hours of news time, right? Now, the news is always published within fraction of seconds. And then this evolution has significant implications when we talk about modernization and creative communication. Once we study these milestones, we can trace how technological innovations have, modernized societies and their communication practices. Each technological leap has introduced new opportunities for creativity, whether it's about curating compelling ads for television or engaging audiences through, social media campaigns. But as communicators, you need to understand these changes, because these changes equip you to adapt your strategies for different media, ensuring your messages resonate in today's fast changing landscapes. And then one thing that you have to remember here is the impact of language, right? As we have explored the evolution of communication practices and the role of media technologies, it's equally important to address how these changes, changes impact language and communication itself. One thing you have to remember here, the rise of digital media has introduced a plethora of new words and phrases into our everyday vocabulary. Terms like selfie, hashtag, and DM me didn't exist a few decades ago, but are now a part of our daily routine activity whenever, or we can say it's a common lexicon, right? Whenever we want to share our ideas or we want others to share our views. So this phenomena demonstrates how media serves as a catalyst for linguistic innovation. There is a shift from formal to informal styles. Digital communication has blurred the lines between professional and casual language. For examples, emails, which were once strictly formal, now often adopt a conversational tone. I think you have marked this change. Even if you send a Google mail, you can just respond by an emoticon. You need not to write anything that you have received it. A heart sign or a smile can do that work, right? This shift fosters relatability and accessibility, but raises question about the boundaries of professionalism in communication. Because while we talk about the advancement, we have to keep in mind whether all the generations accept this or not. Moving forward, language evolves to reflect cultural and technological trends, and media plays a very vital role in accelerating this process. Memes and GIFs that we use and emojis have further diversified how we express ourselves, often replacing traditional words with visuals or abbreviations. However, while these changes are exciting, they also bring challenges, particularly in maintaining the depth and clarity of communication. Abbreviations like LOL, laughing out loud, or BRB, be right back, have made communication quicker and more playful. However, they risk oversimplifying complex ideas, reducing nuanced decisions to mere sound bites. Then the rapid evolution of slang and memes has created a divide between the generations. Older generations may struggle to understand the fast changing vocabulary of young users, leading to potential miscommunication. For the older generation, goat means goat, not God of all times, right? So, in some context, this shift to informal language can undermine the gravity of a message. For example, using abbreviations or casual language in professional communication might lead to misunderstanding or a lack of credibility. Now, why it is so important to understand this? Because when we are talking about modernization and creative communication, it's crucial to adapt your language to your audience, whether it's crafting a marketing campaign or Gen Z or drafting an email for senior executives. Understanding linguistic shifts ensures your message is both clear and impactful. Digital media offers endless opportunities for creativity in languages, but as communicators, you can harness these trends to engage audience effectively using memes, hashtags, and slangs strategically to convey your message without hurting the sentiment of your audience. Now, media's influence on language is of course, a double-edged sword. It enriches your vocabulary and enhances creative expression while presenting challenges in clarity and intergenerational communication. So, as we continue to navigate this evolving landscape, the key lies in striking a balance, embracing innovation while preserving the depth and effectiveness of our communication. Now, continuing our discussion on this transformative power of media and language and communication, let us now explore a deeper role of media as a cultural narrator. Media not only informs but also shapes the story we tell about ourselves, our communities, and the world. Today, let us now discuss how media frames cultural narratives, influences public perception, and even creates cultural symbols that resonate globally. Media doesn't just reflect culture, it actively shapes and reshapes it by framing stories and amplifying symbols that define societal movements. Examples like that, rainbow flag or hashtags such as, in Me Too or Save Kerala during the floods, and illustrate how media turns symbols into powerful icons of change. Through amplification, these symbols transcend their original context to become universal markers of identity, resistance, or solidarity. So, by choosing which stories to highlight and how to frame them, media influences how people perceive and interpret cultural and social issues. This narrative power allows media to set the tone for societal discussions, whether it's about gender equality, whether it is about human rights or environmental sustainability. Now consider any of the social movements that gained momentum largely through media platforms. You have come across so many. So media didn't just report on the movement, it actively created a space for individuals to share their own stories, turning personal experience into a global conversation. Then, beyond telling stories, media also plays a crucial role in setting the public agenda and shaping perceptions of issues and events. How? See, media draws attention to significant concerns such as we have recently what we have witnessed during COVID-19, right? Or that we are witnessing right now, the climate change. By framing these issues within certain narratives, collective responsibility for the pandemic or the urgency of environmental action, media influences how people prioritize and respond to them. While media can unite and inform, it also holds the potential for harm. Biases in storytelling can perpetuate stereotypes, marginalize voices, or distort realities. For example, certain communities may be portrayed very negatively or excluded from narratives altogether, doing what? Impacting inclusivity and societal perceptions. So, by consistently portraying certain behaviors, lifestyles, or ideologies, media normalizes them with the society. This influence of media can both be negative and positive depending on the intention and biases embedded in the narrative. So, how does this tie into when we talk about creative communication? Understanding how media acts as a cultural narrator equips you to craft stories that resonate with audience, inspire action, and creative positive change. So, as responsible communicators, it is very important to recognize and mitigate biases in storytelling. By doing so, you contribute to more inclusive and ethical media narratives. Now see, these images, right, highlight media power in as a cultural narrator. The hashtag #MeToo movement, represented by the inscribed hand, shows how media amplifies individual voices, turning them into a global call for accountability and change. On the other hand, the visual on climate change underscores media's role in framing urgent global issues, shaping public awareness, and driving action. So together they illustrate what? They illustrate how media sets social agendas and empowers transformative movements. So in today's hyper-connected world, media, especially social media, has become a key space where individuals craft and project their identities. But as much as it empowers self-expression, it also introduces unique challenges that affect how we perceive ourselves. See, media allows people to present curated versions of themselves, isn't it? Think about platforms like Insta or LinkedIn, where users carefully select what to post and to highlight certain aspects of their lives, whether it's professional achievements, hobbies, or personal milestones. This curation can be empowering. It gives individuals control over their narrative, letting them showcase their passion, beliefs, and aspirations. However, this isn't without challenge. Why? Because social media often fosters comparisons with idealized portrayal of others. For example, seeing someone perfectly filtered vacation photos or career successes might make us question our own accomplishments and our own lifestyle. Over time, this can impact self-esteem and create pressure to meet these unrealistic standards. So, does anyone among you feel like social media sometimes feel more like a stage than a mirror, isn't it? This duality is central to how media shapes identity. Now, while the ability to represent ourselves digitally is empowering, it's important to recognize the challenges. As I said, the curated nature of social media often leads to what we call highlight reel culture. This is when people only showcase the best moments of their lives, creating an illusion of perfection. As communicators, understanding this dynamic is very much critical. You will need to navigate these platforms not only for your personal identity, but also to connect with others authentically and inclusively. For instance, brands today are focusing more on authenticity because audiences crave realness over perfection. So, identity formation, when we talk about through media, isn't just a personal journey. It's a social trend that influences how we interact, connect, and even consume products and services. Finally, let us talk about interactivity and democratization. Let us first take this interactivity. Digital media, especially social platforms, has given people the tools to actively contribute to and shape the narratives around them. Think of movements like Me Too or Save Earth or Earth Hour. These weren't just hashtags, they became rallying points for social change, enabling people from all walks of life to share their voices, their stories, express solidarity, and demand action. What's remarkable is how social media fosters collaboration through shared content, video blogs, tweets, and these movements gain momentum. In the past, such activism might have been limited to physical spaces like to town halls or protest or near the park areas, but today social media extends the reach globally, connecting people who might otherwise never found a shared cause. Now, let's talk about democratization. Digital platforms have amplified marginal voice and empowered individuals to engage in independent reporting. For example, during natural disasters or political upheavals, citizen journalism often provides real-time, unfiltered updates, sometimes faster than traditional media. Now, but here there's a flip. Democratization comes with challenges. The very openness of these platforms also makes them vulnerable to the spread of misinformation. Echo chambers, where algorithms feed users only the contents that aligns with their existing views, further limit exposure to diverse perspectives, right? So this can reinforce biases and polarize your discussions, undermining the collaborative spirit that participatory culture aims to foster. As communicators, it's crucial to navigate this balance. How can we ensure that digital platform remains spaces for empowerment while minimizing these pitfalls? So, why this should matter to us? Whether you are leading a campaign or building a brand, encouraging active participation from your audience creates stronger connection. But being mindful of misinformation and echo chambers ensures your communication strategies to be more inclusive and responsible. Media, therefore, is not just a tool but a transformative force that drives modernization and fosters creativity in communication. It shapes how societies communicate, form identities, and engage with cultural and global issues. By understanding its evolution and social impact, one becomes better equipped to harness its potential to address challenges and foster progress. So, media's dual role as a creator and reflector of culture demands careful investigation and careful navigation to ensure it remains a force for positive and inclusive transformation. So, in recognizing media's potential, it becomes clear that thoughtful engagement with its tools and platforms can inspire meaningful connections, promote inclusivity, and create lasting social impact. Thank you.